Today we are going to talk about multiplying and dividing integers. This is chapter 3, and we're doing 2 lessons and kind of combining them into one. So, the way I'd like to get started today is I would like you to write down these 2 problems on a piece of paper and solve them both. So, pause the video, solve both problems, and then press play again. Hopefully, you have 20 as the first answer and negative 20 for the second answer. Both of these problems have something in common, and that's that we could have rewritten the problem using multiplication. The reason for this is because we're adding the same number over and over again. So the first problem, 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, could be rewritten as 5 times 4. We could also write this as 4 times 5 because multiplication is commutative. How would we write this second problem? Negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5. We could write this as negative 5 times 4 because we're using the same number, that negative 5, and we're adding it together 4 times. What we can gain from this is that if you take a negative number and you multiply it by a positive number, we are going to get a negative answer because it's simply the repeated addition. You're adding more and more and more negatives together. Let's take a look at another set of problems that I would like you to solve. These problems you can kind of solve mentally as we go through them. Remember, a negative times a positive is going to get us a negative result. So, negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. The multiplication is the same. 5 times 4 is 20, but we have to remember to make our answer negative. Same thing here. 5 times 3 is 15. Make your answer negative. 5 times 2 is 10. Make your answer negative. 5 times 1 is negative 5. And 5 times 0 is 0. So, if we are searching for patterns, the first pattern I hope you notice is going down the first column, and that's that we are keeping the negative 5 the same. What pattern do you notice in the second column? I hope you said that we're subtracting 1 every time. And we are. What pattern do you notice in the third column? I hope you notice that we're adding 5 every time. So if we use this pattern to help us with the next multiplication problem here, we can keep adding 5, add 5, add 5, add 5. 0 plus 5 is positive 5. So that tells me that negative 5 times negative 1 is positive 5. So 5 times 1 is 5, and a negative times a negative actually results in a positive answer. So 5 times 2 is 10. Negative times negative gets me a positive, so that means that negative 5 times negative 2 is positive 10. And the same thing for negative 5 times negative 3. And negative times a negative is a positive, and 5 times 3 is 15. So our pattern continues in each of our columns, and we could keep doing more and more of these problems to keep figuring out more negative times negatives or negative times positives. Here are the rules for multiplying. You've been doing positive times positives for a long, long time now. A positive times a positive will get us a positive answer. Positive answer. A positive times a negative, we just talked about that. That got us a negative answer. A negative times a positive is the same thing as a positive times a negative because of the commutative property. So that's going to also give us a negative answer. And the negative times a negative, that's probably the surprising one. That gets us a positive answer. These are the rules we are going to use for multiplying integers. I hope you're also thinking, well, what are the rules for dividing integers? How does this work with division? And the truth is, the rules for division are exactly the same. Positive divided by a positive gets us a positive. Positive divided by a negative is a negative. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. These rules aren't too hard to remember, but if you're a visual learner, you might like what I'm going to show you next. This is a little graphic that can help you remember the rules for multiplying and dividing integers. It's a triangle. In the top, we have a plus sign. In the bottom two corners, we have minus signs or negative signs. And the way this works is if we have a multiplication problem or a division problem, we cover up the signs of the two numbers in the problem. So let's say we want to do the problem -3 times -2. Our first number is a negative, so we can cover that up. Our second number is also a negative, so we can cover up this other negative sign. And what's left is the sign of our answer. Negative times a negative is a positive, so our answer would be +6. Let's try another one like that. Thought there was a way I could undo everything, but I guess not. What if we did the problem -5 divided by +5? So our first number is negative, so we can cover up the negative sign here. Our second number is positive, cover up the positive sign, and that means our answer is going to be negative. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, and since it's a negative divided by a positive, our answer is -1. That might be a trick for you to help remember your rules. Right now, we'll go through some really quick practice problems. Our first problem is number 1 from your notes in your note packet, -5 times 10. 5 times 10 is 50, and remember, a negative times a positive is a negative. So the answer to this problem is -50. Number 2, 12 divided by 4 is 3. But it's a positive divided by a negative, so my answer is going to be negative. And we'll do number 5. This is an order of operations problem because we have multiple steps going on. We're going to start with division first because that's what's coming first here. 22 divided by -11. A positive divided by a negative is -2. Now we're going to multiply that by -3. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, so -2 times -3 is +6. The last problem, number 8, I'm not going to solve it for you, but I just want to give you a tip before you get started. This is a pretty big fraction problem. All you have to do is take your numerator and denominator and separate them. So what I would do if I were you is I would write my numerator and my denominator as separate problems, solve them, and then put them back together as a fraction in your final answer. That's my hint for you. Tonight, for your assignment, you're going to finish the practice problems 1 through 10 on page 3 of your note packet. Remember, we already did a couple of these on the previous screen. You're also going to do your Google form for 3.4 and 3.5. That's all one form. And the hints I have for you tonight are to take your time and don't overthink it.